I am Courtney Vale, and I am presenting a summary and overview of our scientific and technical analysis, looking at the progress of implementation of the SPA Marine Mammal Action Plan. I am presenting on behalf of myself and co-author Monica Barovia. This report was produced for the Caribbean Environment Program and the SPA RAC under the CARIMAM project. In order to provide some context for this technical review, the original Marine Mammal Action Plan was drafted by a group of marine mammal experts who convened a workshop under the SPA program in July of 2005 on Barbados. The purpose of this plan was to guide the development and implementation of marine mammal-focused initiatives by SPA contracting parties, and then to assist in prioritizing marine mammal protection, and most importantly, the development of national species recovery plans. These global experts assembled for that workshop in 2005 subsequently became an ad hoc working group who, over the course of several years of review, revised and prioritized key elements of the larger action plan into a subset of priority actions that was then presented to the full conference of the parties for endorsement and adoption in September of 2008 on St. John's, Antigua and Barbuda. More specifically, the Marine Mammal Action Plan aims to prioritize issues and threats to aid the development and implementation of national recovery plans through 5 areas of targeted action, including increasing scientific knowledge and developing protective legislation and policies, among others. And within the framework of the adopted Marine Mammal Action Plan, these 5 target areas then guide the recommendations that address 11 primary categories of issues or threat indicators, including fisheries interactions, pollution and marine mammal health, climate change, whale watching, and others. The primary aim and objective of our scientific review was to take a look at the advancement of the Marine Mammal Action Plan in the region over the last 12 years since its adoption in order to assess current threats to marine mammals. We also aim to evaluate progress by contracting parties on a country-by-country basis towards achieving objectives of the Marine Mammal Action Plan, and then to provide recommendations to enhance regional cooperation. The recommendations and outcomes presented in this report are based on the collection, synthesis, and evaluation of a diverse array of data, not only pertaining to the 17 countries who are contracting parties to SPA, but also including more broadly the entire wider Caribbean region. Data points were collected from a variety of sources, including scientific and technical literature, SPA focal point interviews, and questionnaires, where we were able to conduct interviews with 12 out of the 17 contracting parties, regional expert interviews, CARIMAM surveys, and other sources of data. In order to conduct an assessment, we had to create a framework for assessing the data that were collected. In an attempt to provide a visual tool to represent relative progress towards the implementation of the Marine Mammal Action Plan, we had to identify a set of indicators to establish a pool of criteria that we could use to qualitatively and quantitatively evaluate progress towards the primary goal of implementing Marine Mammal Action Plan objectives as presented in the original action plan. So in addition to the 11 primary categories of threat indicators originally identified, an additional 2 categories, the absence or presence of legislation dedicated solely to the protection of marine mammals, and the absence or presence of species recovery or action plans, were included to create a pool of 13 indicators or evaluative markers by which to assess progress. Furthermore, assessment of the adequacy or effectiveness of measures, initiatives, or programs reviewed was beyond the scope of this study. For this reason, for the categories of national legislation and national action plans, a designation of yes or no was defined, rather than a relative level of implementation. This was to enable a consistent assessment across countries and across varying types of legislation. While we acknowledge in the report for each country that fisheries or other biodiversity legislation that might address marine mammal protection, these were not awarded a yes unless that legislation was dedicated solely to the protection of marine mammals. Given the relative lack of consolidated or harmonized regional data, The challenges inherent to summarizing and evaluating trends should be acknowledged and considered a limitation of the study. However, we assessed relative threat levels based upon data available since adoption of the original Marine Mammal Action Plan in 2008, assessments available at the national level, and general scientific consensus for more impending or global threats such as climate change, and bearing in mind the precautionary principle. A color was designated based on a qualitative and quantitative assessment that was informed by available data. Definitions of high, moderate, and low were established, and unknown or data deficient categories were given a gray color. The same scheme was used to evaluate country responses, but of course, color designations were flipped for the high and low categories. So in this way, we were able to complete a country-by-country assessment, noting the relative levels of threat and country responses, resulting in a summary table that looks like this. It should be noted that each country had a fuller analysis completed that supports the color designations and consolidates the data, but those individual analyses are not included in the technical review, but rather just these summary tables, primarily in order to keep the technical review to a manageable size. The ultimate aim of this assessment is to focus national and then regional attention on those higher priority areas of concern, either where threat is high and country response is low, red, red, or where threats are high and country responses are unknown, red and gray. I emphasize that the purpose of the color coding in assessments is not to single out insufficient country effort or response, but rather the interpretation of these data is meant to focus and prioritize areas of high threat, which may necessitate a response under the Marine Mammal Action Plan and by individual countries. It should also be noted that we refrain from making assumptions regarding threat levels where data were scarce. However, in the absence of local data, some reasonable assumptions based in a precautionary approach, for example, where there is a high vessel traffic, the threat of a ship strike is likely higher, were made, especially where regional data or scientific consensus around an issue supported an assumption of relative risk levels. Similarly, where country response was low, we didn't make the assumption that the threat level was therefore higher as a result of inaction, nor did we evaluate a country by asking whether it should have taken action. In other words, we did not expect, nor is it reflected in the analysis, a country to preemptively respond to an indicator that is not currently a local threat. For example, if there are no captive marine mammal facilities, a country would not be expected to have captive marine mammal regulations as part of its legislation. These correlations between country response and intensity of a threat would be dependent not only on the availability of data to support such a correlation, but many other factors, including political will, financial and institutional capacity, and many others, and therefore are beyond the scope of this report and would require a deeper analysis, not enabled by the parameters of this review. We also believe this tool and the country assessments can be an organic and living document that can guide action and be adjusted as countries continue to advance with planning and strategic initiatives. The second part of our technical review focused on assessing threats to marine mammals in the region, updating our current state of knowledge and identifying gaps. In general, at least 37 species of marine mammals have been documented in the region. At least 7 of these species are IUCN red listed as critically endangered, or vulnerable, and at least 8 are data deficient. Some countries in the region have red listed species under their own national jurisdictions. These threat categories were identified by the original Marine Mammal Action Plan, and while all of them are global threats to marine mammals, the impact of many of these threats to local and regional populations of marine mammals is generally unquantifiable and unknown because of the lack of marine mammal population assessments and more detailed data. Regardless of the lack of consolidated or harmonized data, however, for some threat categories, enough data exists to prioritize attention and concern and hopefully inspire action. In these next slides, I am merely going to touch briefly on highlights for the region under each threat category. The first threat category identified under the Marine Mammal Action Plan is fisheries interactions. Fisheries in the region are diverse, but consist primarily of artisanal and small-scale fisheries, while interactions with fisheries and bycatch, including entanglement, is identified as the single largest threat to marine mammals globally. The impact of fisheries on marine mammal populations in the Caribbean is relatively unknown. Not only is there a lack of monitoring and reporting of bycatch data, knowledge about distinct populations in the region is lacking, making it extremely difficult to identify population-level impacts at the local or regional level. What we do know is that at least 16 species of marine mammals have been documented as being caught in longlines, gillnet trawls, beach seines, and trap fisheries. Most frequently, interactions have been reported for bottlenose, Guyana, and Risso's dolphins, pilot whales, false killer whales, takushi, beaked whales, and sperm whales. There is also a growing concern about the incidence and threat of fish aggregating devices, or FADs, in the region. Reports of entanglements in these devices is increasingly being documented, and such devices can also contribute to marine debris when floating in from other regions, or when untethered from the seafloor, serving to entangle marine life even when not actively being used by fishermen. In reviewing most of the fisheries management plans or strategic documents of regional fisheries organizations, the mention of marine mammals, even as bycatch, is virtually non-existent, pointing to a need for greater involvement with regional fisheries organizations. Also under the fisheries category is directed take, which includes capture and killing of cetaceans for food, which continues opportunistically and more formally in the region. At least 7 current parties to the SPA protocol participate in the organized takes of marine mammals, and other countries use large whales and smaller cetaceans when bycaught or stranded. For example, St. Vincent and the Grenadines is authorized by the International Whaling Commission to take up to 28 humpback whales between 2019 and 2025, provided that they're used for local consumption. Since 2015, 5 humpback whales have been killed. Other countries like St. Lucia and Venezuela conduct some of the largest hunts for small cetaceans in the region, and these hunts are all potentially in violation of the SPA protocol. The second major threat category identified by the Marine Mammal Action Plan is habitat degradation. While most countries in the region have implemented tools such as ecosystem-based management, integrated coastal zone management, and oil spill contingency plans, they often do not include marine mammal protection when conducting environmental impact assessments. Furthermore, SPA parties are currently not reporting or seeking STAC review of significant projects prior to approval for assessment of pertinence under the exemptions provision of the SPA protocol to enhance environmental review and assessments regarding marine mammal considerations. And of note, oil and gas development is generally increasing in the region. Many countries in the region continue to dump untreated or inadequately treated wastewater and sewage directly into the ocean and waterways. And the influx of sargassum since 2011 has become a significant management and potential health and safety issue that requires attention. The third category of threat is pollution. Pollution in the region emanates from a variety of land-based and marine sources and activities, including tourism, industry, agricultural, shipping, and exploration for oil and gas. The volume of maritime transport in the region suggests that this activity constitutes an important source of pollution. Shipping also contributes to noise pollution, a less studied threat in the region that has been linked to marine mammal disturbance, displacement, and injury in other oceans of the world. Marine mammal strandings in the Caribbean region have also been associated with naval training exercises, and disturbance from whale watch vessels is documented in the scientific literature. While there is a considerable effort in the region, particularly under the LBS protocol regarding various land-based and marine-based pollutants, including action plans and initiatives to address such pollution, there is no continuous monitoring program in place to determine impacts on marine mammal health and their critical habitats and prey. Marine litter is also accumulating in the region, where up to 80% of the litter found in the Caribbean Sea is made of plastic. Currently, there are 14 Caribbean countries that have banned plastic bags and/or styrofoam as part of efforts to combat marine pollution. Region-wide, nearly 85% of wastewater discharged in the Caribbean Sea is left untreated. Concern about mercury levels and other contaminants in sargassum, marine mammals, sharks, and other fish species has been expressed as a growing interest and priority in the region. Stranding networks are a viable and underutilized resource to support the collection of contaminants data. The inclusion of contaminant investigations during pathological examination of stranded or hunted cetaceans could provide critical information towards assessing pollution and impacts in the region. The fourth category of threat identified is whale watching. While whale watching is thriving and growing in some parts of the region, it is emerging or unexplored in others. Similarly, there are a patchwork of regulations and guidelines throughout the region, pointing to the need for better outreach around the baseline guidelines adopted by parties in 2011 after a series of whale watch workshops. A few parties have developed and/or adopted their own marine mammal identification guides and viewing guidelines. However, capacity building and monitoring adherence to best practices is a challenge. There is a general lack of monitoring of the long-term impacts of levels, persistence, and intensity of unregulated vessel traffic associated with marine mammal viewing in the Caribbean. Opportunistic and unregulated viewing occurs in many countries, suggesting the potential for a more formalized network of responsible operators to guide best practice in the region. The fifth issue area identified by the Marine Mammal Action Plan is marine protected areas. Despite the collaboration of 5 countries to connect the aims and activities of their marine mammal-focused sanctuaries through the Sister Sanctuary Initiative, there currently is no established program to promote network-type collaboration among SPA-protected areas based on ecological connectivity or common protection goals among those 35 protected areas listed. While several protected areas have management plans that consider marine mammals, most of the majority of MPAs in the region do not consider marine mammal protection in the design, management, or operational and financial planning of those areas. The SPA-RAC is currently working within the Transatlantic Initiative to develop a tool to help managers integrate marine mammal protection into their planning and operations. The sixth issue area is research. Most of the existing data and research effort in the region is focused on the humpback and sperm whales, common bottlenose dolphin, and the West Indian manatee. More recently, research effort has focused on the killer whale, minke whale, and false killer whale. Population level assessments at the regional and local level are severely lacking. The significant lack of species data remains a need to be addressed. Despite a number of research initiatives, there is no single network of researchers or other collaborators or a permanent mechanism that would serve to coordinate marine mammal research in the region, including data collection and data consolidation. Although the Caraman project is helping to at least temporarily fill that need, much of the research is conducted by NGOs, often without participation of government or regulatory authorities, which hampers information exchange and the integration of important data into management and policies at the national level. The seventh issue area identified by the Marine Mammal Action Plan is strandings. Marine mammal strandings occur throughout the Caribbean, and the responses to these events is highly variable. Oftentimes, stranding response is conducted through NGOs and loose networks of individuals. In other places, government agencies coordinate the response. At least 7 stranding response and/or disentanglement workshops and trainings have been conducted in the region since 2008. The International Whaling Commission has participated in several of these. Despite these past capacity building and training workshops, key primary objectives have yet to be achieved, including the centralization of data and archived samples, a centralized regional coordination and response, and the establishment of a regional focal point or implementing agency. The existing Caribbean Stranding Network has the potential to serve as a regional node for stranding coordination and to promote the increased connectivity to local and national focal points and existing networks, but funding and increased capacity is required. It is clear that stranding networks are important vehicles to provide data on many levels and across threats, informing issues such as bycatch, vessel strike, noise impact, contaminants assessment, and improving basic knowledge on species and enhancing collaboration among regional bodies. The 8th issue is captivity. At least 54 facilities in the insular Caribbean hold marine mammals in captivity, with the most commonly held species being the bottlenose dolphin. There is limited data on dolphin population assessments, and hence it's difficult to determine the impact of live captures and their potential harm to local populations, which remains a threat to wild dolphin populations in the region. In the past, a few countries, primarily Cuba, participated in live captures for commercial purposes, but the opportunistic take of wild dolphins for facilities reportedly continues. Proposals for the establishment of new facilities may decline in a post-COVID economy as facilities struggle to stay open and profitable during the pandemic. The development, adoption, and monitoring of regulations and guidelines governing the acquisition, care, and maintenance of marine mammals in captivity requires attention. To date, only one SPA party, the Kingdom of the Netherlands, has presented an exemption to the protocol with the STAC for captures, exports, or imports of marine mammals for educational or research purposes. The ninth issue is acoustic disturbance. There is ongoing and increasing concern regarding the potential effects on marine mammals of underwater noise produced during geophysical seismic surveys, military training exercises, and vessel traffic. Whales and dolphins, pinnipeds, and sirenia, the manatees, all rely on sound for fundamental biological and ecological aspects of their lives, including communication, finding prey, and avoiding predators. Mass cetacean stranding events have been associated with military operations across the globe. Vessel noise is also a known source of disturbance for cetaceans, including from whale watching vessels. There is a relative lack of data on acoustic disturbance, whether acute or chronic, and relating to the persistence or intensity of noise in the region. To better understand the threat of noise within the wider Caribbean marine environment, monitoring is required to collect baseline data that can be assessed over time to reveal the persistence or intensity of acoustic disturbance or underwater noise associated with sonars, maritime and coastal traffic, and activities that affect vital marine mammal behavior. The 10th issue area identified by the Marine Mammal Action Plan is vessel strikes, and shipping in the wider Caribbean is one of the main identifiable anthropogenic impact drivers, with high concentrations of shipping lanes throughout the Caribbean islands. Commercial cruise vessel data is less available, but is considered significant. Vessel traffic not only contributes to direct injury to marine mammals, but also serves as a significant source of underwater noise in the region. A joint IWC and SPA workshop to address vessel collisions with marine mammals occurred in Panama in June of 2014, and at that workshop, it was reported that there were around 10 reports from the wider Caribbean area listed in that IWC ship strikes database from 1961 to present. This number may be a reflection of underreporting rather than the absence of occurrence. There is a lack of a central or simple reporting format for the inclusion of vessel strike data from the Caribbean into the IWC database. A variety of platforms exist within the Caribbean that can serve as data collection points for vessel strike data, including sailors, regattas, recreational crews, and whale watch operators. Some countries are deploying technological tools to attempt to mitigate collisions between whales and vessels, including REPSET in the French West Indies. The final issue category is climate change. While we may bear witness to intensifying weather events in the region, the impact of climate change on marine mammals is less clear and really unquantifiable at this time. The IWC has led discussions through the convening of 4 workshops on climate change, the most recent in 2014. The small cetacean populations living in restricted habitats such as estuaries, rivers, and shallow waters were identified as likely finding it more difficult to adapt to changing climate circumstances. Research continues to better evaluate how cetacean populations are likely to respond to climate change. While many countries in the region are working to reduce their carbon footprints and have committed to lower greenhouse gas emission targets, considerations of marine mammal protection are generally absent from planning strategies. One country, the United States, has integrated marine mammal protection into their climate mitigation strategies. Finally, the entire exercise of evaluating country efforts and analyzing trends and threat categories was to identify a set of recommendations that could inspire action and guide deeper collaboration between countries and organizations. Through the technical review, we also hope to raise the profile of marine mammal protection in the region. Some of the higher level recommendations are provided here as mere examples and generally speak to enhancing data collection, coordination, and centralization to increasingly inform planning and conservation strategies. We hope that you will engage with a fuller report upon its dissemination by the SPA RAC, and we look forward to your questions. Thank you.